Hey, my name's Justin Allison, and I'm the discipleship pastor here at Greenwood. And today we're going to be looking at Proverbs chapter 10, starting in verse 11. And these Proverbs that we find in chapter 10 are kind of a collection of these two-line Proverbs that are contrasting. So the first part of it contrasts with the second part of it. And they're not really along like the same line necessarily of thinking, but the ones that I want to look at today are very closely related and occur in sequence. And so I just want to look at Proverbs chapter 10, verse 11, 12, 13, and 14. So let's do that now. So before we dive into these ancient words and proverbs, I want you to think about this moment that we've all experienced, right? Where we're sitting looking at our phone. Maybe it's early in the morning or maybe it's late at night. And you're just kind of mindlessly scrolling. Just, yep. hmm And then you see something and you feel that little sensation where you tense up, from maybe it's a comment or a post, but it's those words that make you just, all of a sudden. And the writer of the Proverbs says something fascinating about the power of words. In verse number 11, we read that the words of the godly are a life-giving fountain. The words of the wicked conceal violent intentions. And so the words of the godly are a life-giving fountain, not like a drip or that little bitty stream that comes out of your faucet when it's almost frozen. It's not a trickle, it's a fountain. And I don't know about you, but when I just imagine a fountain on a hot day, thinking of the one outside of the Fort Worth Cowgirl Museum and the what is that, the Science Museum. My kids used to love to play there. And when I remember going to that fountain and it's hot outside, there are people around. There's a lot of motion and energy, and some of the kids are kicking their shoes off and running through the water, and just it seems to be a place of life. It's something that in ancient times not only would be a source of life giving in that it's water, but that it's also this blessing and this gathering place, a source of comfort. And that's what words can be. That's the good intention of words. That's the good ability that our God given speech can bring. But there's something else that happens there too. On the contrast to the godly words that are a life giving fountain, the words of the wicked conceal violence. And so it's contrasted as this hidden violence. These words that look fine on the surface, but underneath, they're divisive. There's something else going on. And we've seen this, haven't we? We know when we see a comment that seems like they're trying to be helpful, but it's actually condescending, or somebody is just saying something on it, whether it's in a conversation or social media post. They'll make a comment saying, and at the end it'll say just saying, and we all know that maybe those words are true, but they're trying to poke and prod and hurt with those kinds of words. And so here's the question: when the words that we type, the words that we speak, the comments that we send, what are we creating? Are we creating a fountain or something else? So that's the question that we all have to deal with. And the text goes on later to say this: hatred stirs up quarrels, but love makes up for all offenses. Hatred stirs, which is like an active verb. There's action going on. It's stirring, it's generating, but not in a good way. It's generating quarrels. But then on the other end of that, love makes up for all of the offenses. It covers, it heals, it restores. And, sometimes I wonder in my own life, in the worlds of comments and threads and posts and phone calls and text messages, What am I stirring up? What evidence, what legacy am I leaving? What online footprint am I leaving? Is it something that's stirring up quarrels, or is it something that makes up for offenses? Because you and I have this power of words, according to Proverbs. It's not in the same way that's generative, speaking light into being or something like God has, but we do have the ability to be something that's like a fountain, to be something that would conceal violence. And I know the common argument against this is more like, hey, you don't understand what they said, or you don't understand what they did. And, maybe that's true. Maybe it is that bad. Maybe they were wrong. But the question that Proverbs makes us ponder is really, so what are your words creating? All of these things may be true, but what are your words and actions? What is your response actually creating? Is it adding quarrel? Is it adding to the violent intentions, or is it creating a safe and peaceful, life-giving environment that covers and heals? And that's really the choice that we're given. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 13 says, wise words come from the lips of people with understanding, but those lacking sense will be beaten with a rod. Beaten with a rod. Now that's quite a difference there. The wise words come from people with understanding, and then the others are people who are lacking sense, and that results in being beaten with a rod. And so, these same words can be spoken with understanding, or they can be spoken with other intents, mean intents. They can come from a place of knowing but not understanding. And the honest truth is, we can know all the facts about something, and still not understand. Understanding requires us to step into someone else's shoes, to experience, to think about, their side of the story. So it requires us asking some questions like, why would someone say that? Why would they feel that way? Why would they believe that way? Not to agree with them, not to affirm everything that they do, but to understand them. And here's what's wild. When we speak from understanding, our words start to change and become a little different. They become a little more human and a little less harsh. Our words are the same sentiment can be true, but we can express things in understanding in a way that invites rather than attacks. And I've seen this play out in my own life, just in maybe asking some questions of someone rather than jumping immediately to pointing out problems. When we do that, we show that we have read the next verse. Verse 13 says, wise words come from the lips of people with understanding, but those who lack sense will be beaten with rods. And then verse 14 says, wise people treasure knowledge, but the babbling of a fool invites disaster. So this kind of hits back at that theme of what is more desirable than gold and riches. Well, we've talked about this before, that in Proverbs, it's wisdom and understanding and good character and obedience to the Lord and knowledge. These things are precious and special. And then on the other hand, the babbling of a fool invites disaster. When you think about babbling, it's just noise. You just hear noise. And that's the way that foolish words work. They're words without thought, without care, without understanding. And the thing is, we've all said or used these words, and we've all been guilty of being like a babbling fool. And we've all experienced the disaster that comes from that, the relationship that's damaged, or the hurt that is caused, the thing that you can't take back. And so what do we do in this world that we live in where, we can say anything to just about anybody. What do we do? How do we become a fountain in a world where there are so many babblings and such a torrent, a rush of noisy words around us? How do we speak words of life and encouragement in a situation like that? And maybe it comes back to asking questions, not am I right, but when we are about to speak, will this be like a fountain that gives life? Not, you know, do they deserve this? Because we can usually convince ourselves that someone deserves the bad thing we're going to say. But instead, what am I contributing with these words? Because the thing is, we could be completely right. Our facts could be completely correct. Our argument could be airtight. But if the words that we use to express those things are stirring up quarrels rather than making up for offenses, if they're becoming, if we're expressing assumptions rather than understanding, then what have we built? Well, in that case, we would have built the wrong sort of things. We have that choice every day. So we need to remember back to the fountain that we talked about earlier, where people slow down, they stop and rest and they are refreshed. And if people encountered our comments or our posts or, the conversations, how do they feel after those things? Are they beaten down? Are they exhausted? Or are they refreshed? Because we have that choice every day with the words that we choose to use. And God has given us a choice in those words. We have that choice every day to decide if we're going to speak in a way that is a fountain of life or treasuring wisdom, or we can speak in a way that's babbling and that covers wicked intentions and that deserves discipline and beating with a rod. We have that power every day that we take a breath. And so, what will you choose to use your words to focus on today or this week? What are the ways that you're going to use your words? Because it matters in the world that we live in. We can either build up the name of Christ or we can tear it down. I want to encourage you to build it up. And so I hope that's been helpful. If you want to talk more about Proverbs, I would enjoy doing that. You can contact me online, justin@greenwood.church, or you can come find me in between one of our worship services on Sunday.